by Katie Alender. I turned away from the brightness of the muted television and rested my eyes on the ceiling. The glow from the screen made the whole room flicker like a rainbow campfire. And then I heard it, a footstep in the hall. I froze. All my concentration shifted to listening for another sound. The flashing TV hovered on the outer fringes of my awareness. I felt like I was seeing, hearing, breathing out of my ears. Another step. I was on my feet and standing at the entrance to the hallway. So quickly, I felt a little lightheaded. I balled my empty hand into a fist. Casey stood perfectly still in the middle of the hall, her body angled toward our parents' bedroom door. Her long, old-fashioned Christmas nightgown hung to her ankles, still creased from being folded in its box for 8 months. I'd seen her like this once before, silent, waiting, plotting. Against our parents, against me. Slowly, hesitantly, she raised her hand. "Casey," I said. She jumped about a foot in the air and landed hunched over, clutching her chest. "God, Alexis," she hissed. "You scared the crap out of me." I didn't move any closer. "What are you doing out of bed?" "Going to the bathroom," she said. "What are you doing out of bed?" "It's 1 o'clock." I shrugged. "Couldn't sleep." "So you're playing security guard? You think I'm going to try to kill everyone?" "No, of course not. Although, maybe that was what I was doing." Casey reached for our parents' doorknob. "Wait," I said. "I need to pee, Lexi." She said, "Do you have to analyze every detail of everything I do?" "I'm not trying to analyze you," I said. "I'm trying to keep you from peeing on Mom and Dad's carpet." I pointed to the door on my right. "Bathroom." Her shoulders slumped. "Everything looks the same in this place. You'll get used to it." I went back to the couch, feeling virtuous for not pointing out it was, after all, her fault that we had to move to Silver Sage Acres. I do not. A minute later, Casey drifted into the room and sat on the love seat, her arms crossed in front of her. "Why is the sound off?" I shrugged. We stared at the silent infomercial. As I started to nod off, Casey spoke. "How about we skip school tomorrow?" "I don't really do that anymore," I said. "Besides, everybody knows you never skip your first day." She curled her knees under herself. "Maybe I can catch chicken pox between now and 8 o'clock." "It'll be fine," I said, trying not to think of the bazillion things that could make it not fine. "I'll help you." I wish I hadn't missed the first week. Everybody else knows each other, and I don't even have my schedule yet. She went pale. Or maybe it was the blue light from the TV. "I don't know where anything is." "Mom can take you a little early," I said. "They'll have somebody show you around, point out where all your classes are." Casey clamped her mouth shut and gazed at me through her wide blue eyes. She seemed to be a tiny ball of a person. Even her toes curled inward. "Lexi, is there any way I could ride with you?" All weekend I'd been waiting for some bit of my little sister's personality to work its way out from under her odd, fragile shell. And now, with that one question, she was being herself for the first time. Her old, wheedling self. Mom and Dad used to call her Slick, and Dad always said Casey could sell a broom to a vacuum salesman. Even if it was her needy side that came back first, it was a glimpse of Casey, the real Casey. The first glimpse I'd seen in a really, really long time. Megan didn't even blink when she saw my sister standing beside me in the foyer the next morning. Hi guys, ready to go? By the time we were all buckled up, Casey looked like a prisoner about to walk the Green Mile. There's nothing wrong with being nervous, Megan said, looking at her in the rear view. You'll be all right. I'm not nervous, Casey said, but her voice wobbled, betraying her. We had to maneuver a little to get her out of the back seat with her shortish, tightish denim skirt on. When she was safely on solid ground, no risk of flashing her underwear to the entire parking lot, I started walking toward the double doors with Megan. After going about 30 feet, I got the distinct feeling that we weren't being followed. Sure enough, Casey was rooting in place by the car, rooted in place by the car, gazing back out at the road like she might make a break for it. I said to Megan, I think I'd better go with my sister. She shaded her eyes to look back. Seems like it, she said. See you in chem. I walked over to Casey, who held her backpack in front of her like a shield. Casey, I said, you have to go inside. Otherwise, it doesn't count as going to school. I changed my mind, she said, her voice an octave higher than normal. I don't want to be here. The good news is, nobody asked. I gave her a gentle push. As we walked toward the front office, I saw a bunch of people I knew. But Casey didn't seem to recognize anyone, not even the kids she'd gone to school with for years. Nobody acted like they knew her either. Maybe her generation had shorter memories than mine. I blamed texting. Casey couldn't stop gaping at the kids in their happy, animated groups. She gradually slowed to a stop in the middle of the corridor. I raised my eyebrows and waited. She took a breath and held it, her chest rising without a fall. I don't have a locker. They'll assign you one, I said. They'll even give you a lock. Near yours? No, near your classes. Casey started gnawing on her fingernails. Why did she look so childish? She was 14, only 2 years younger than me. Listen, I pulled her fingers out of her mouth. It's going to be fine. I'll help you. I can show you where. Stop acting like I'm a baby, she said, yanking away from me. People peered at us curiously. Casey was pretty, maybe even beautiful, even with her hair in a hurried ponytail and her denim skirt, Minnie Mouse t-shirt, and Converse tennis shoes. I lowered my voice. Casey, it's only high school. If I did it, you can do it. As if her shoes were made of lead, she pushed one forward, then the other, and we were walking again. When we got to the front office, I pointed at the register and leaned in to hug her. She jerked back. Okay, I said, stepping away. Have a good day then. No, wait, I didn't mean. She flapped her arms helplessly. At Harmony Valley, we weren't allowed to touch each other. Well, newsflash, Toto, I said, stinging from her rejection. You're not in Kansas anymore. Nice camera, the girl said. How many megapixels? Mine's 12.1. Oh, it's not digital, I said. I shoot film. She blinked. But how many megapixels? She pressed the button and the flash shot open, startling her. The dozen megapixel beast took a hard landing in the grass. I watched her white blades of damp grass from every part of the camera except the lens. When she was finished, she looked up, still waiting for an answer. 9.7, I said. Cool, she smiled. Let's go to the library. I really like the bricks there. I followed without protest. During one of their many Casey-themed phone calls with the Surrey High Guidance Counselor over the summer, my parents had slipped up and mentioned my photography hobby. This prompted said guidance counselor to mention the school's photography class, which prompted said parents to bug me endlessly about enrolling in it. I'd given in partly to make exploratory photos. Never mind that there was nothing worth exploring at Surrey High, but Daffodils/Delilah insisted we hike all over the campus, examining tree bark, sidewalk cracks, and now the bricks in the library wall. I'd taken 4 photos. Film is expensive. By digital is free, and Daffodil couldn't get enough. She had me scroll through 18 identical images of a pine cone so I could tell her which one was the best. I chose one at random. That's my favorite too, she said. I wish I could be charmed by her enthusiasm, but the words that kept creeping to the edge of my tongue were dangerously non-charming. So I opted for silence, under covers of which I plotted out the main points of the argument I'd use to get unenrolled from the class. As we changed course to head for the bricks, something across the courtyard caught my eye. A late arriving student and her mother. The mother was young and pretty, sitting in a wheelchair. The daughter was a study in awkwardness. She wore denim overalls over a shiny, cheap-looking pink shirt, like a dance recital leftover. Her stringy hair hung loose around her face, with an enormous fake sunflower pinned above one ear. I thought there was something odd and stilted about the way she moved until I noticed that she walked with a cane, like an actual old people cane. I snapped a couple pictures of them and then noticed that the girl was looking right at me. I blushed and turned away, the camera still hiding my face. Luckily, third period was English with Mr. O'Brien, who knew me from sophomore year. He saw my pink hair and occasionally prickly attitude as evidence that I was one of those temperamental creative types. In other words, I got away with a lot in his class. I asked if I could go to the office about a personal issue. He said he hoped everything was okay and wrote me a hall pass. When I told the office secretary I needed to talk to Mrs. Ames about my schedule, she sat back in her chair and gazed at me through her reading glasses, which magnified her no-nonsense glare. It's the 6th day of school, she said. You think the principal has nothing better to do than listen to you complain? That's all right, Ivy. There was no mistaking Mrs. Ames' voice, deep and resonant in the way only school principals' voices are. She appeared at the doorway. I can spare 5 minutes. Come in, Alex. During my more, shall we say, impetuous period, I sat on her scratchy old couch about once a week. Now I got upgraded to the guest chair. Looking around, I saw an unfamiliar, fake plant in the corner and a new diploma on the wall, a master's degree. When did you get that? I asked. Just this past June, she said, putting her reading glasses on. Thanks for noticing. You're welcome, I said, and we sat and stared at each other. Apparently, apart from my misbehavior and its consequences, we didn't actually have much to talk about. Then we both spoke at once. You've been on my mind this morning, she said. Just as I said, I have to get out of photography. She sat back. And why is that? As calmly as I could, I gave her a rundown of how thoroughly I detested the class. I led with the fact that we never actually spent any time in the darkroom because everyone else shot digital, and ended with an impassioned visual critique of the brick wall. Miss Ames nodded from time to time, seemingly content to listen to as many complaints as I could dredge up. If there was moss growing on it or something, that would be one thing, I said. But seriously, they're bricks. Finally, out of ammunition, I gripped the armrest of the chair and waited. She folded her hands and sighed. Then she tilted her head to the left and the right, stealing glances of something on her desk. School district policy, she said, does not allow transfer out of an enrolled class without pressing circumstances, which don't traditionally include students' opinions on the aesthetic merits of building materials. I started talking as soon as I could get another lungful of air. But Miss Ames, this class is incompatible with my skill level. I truly believe that I will become a worse photographer every day I'm forced to participate. She held up a hand. All right, Alex, calm down. Please, I said. I didn't even want it on my schedule. My father found out about it and wouldn't leave me alone until... Stop. She gave me a sharp look. While you're ahead. I like your arguments better when you weren't blaming other people. I shut my mouth, but not for long. There's no chance then. She was still studying whatever was on her desk. It's so serendipitous that you came in here this morning, she said, as if we'd finished the discussion and were moving on. Why? I asked, suddenly suspicious. She handed me a sheet of paper. Looking for the next generation of superstar photographers, read the heading at the top, announcing the first annual Young Visionaries contest. It's a photography competition, she said. The grand prize is a scholarship and a paid summer internship. Ah, I tried to hand the flyer back. Thanks for thinking of me. She wouldn't take it. You're not even going to consider it? I shrugged. Not like I could possibly win. Why not? Because I'm not going to enter. Because I have better things to do with my time than compete in some cheesy contest, surrounded by overachieving college application patters. Miss Ames turned her attention to rearranging the pens in a mug by her phone. You don't just send your work in and either win or lose. It's more of a process than that. There are interviews, social functions, but the deadline for application is tomorrow. Contests aren't really my thing, I said, reaching for my bag. That sounds like a groundless line of reasoning to me. Her chair let out a loud creak as she swiveled toward her computer. But I know you, Alexis, and I imagine no amount of money could entice you to do something you don't want to do. Wait, I said, how much money? She smirked but tried to wipe it off her face before she turned around. I believe the scholarship is $5,000 and the internship is paid probably minimum wage. Oh, oh, I said, and then, oh. So, okay, before you call me a sellout, here's the thing. My parents have decent jobs, but even with our health insurance, I suspected they'd had to lay out a bundle of money to keep Casey at Harmony Valley instead of the county facility. College didn't worry me. I figured I'd get a summer job and save up enough to go to a state university, hopefully with some kind of, hey, at least you tried academic scholarship. But there was just one little variable. I wanted a car. I mean, I really, really wanted a car. Bad. And if I got a scholarship, maybe mom and dad would shave a few dollars out of my college fund and apply it to something pretty with four wheels and a gas tank. Mrs. Ames was watching me. I examined my fingernails. The only thing is, I'm not sure I would have time for all that, I said. What with all the extra time I'm spending on photography class. I folded the paper in half and set it on her desk, trying to look both angelic and apologetic. That's a shame, she said softly. I raised my eyes to meet hers. I would just hate for an elective class to get in the way of your ambitions. I totally agree, I said, my voice almost disappearing. Do we understand each other? She asked. Afraid to drop my gaze, I nodded. She smiled, but tried to hide it. Better head back to class. I stood up, reaching hesitantly for the flyer and tucking it into the pocket of my bag. Before third period ended, an office runner came into the classroom with a slip of paper, handed it to Mr. O'Brien, who said, Warren, flipping it at me. I yanked it from his hand and read it right there at his desk. It was a memo from the guidance office. Class substitution, Alexis Warren. Period 2. Report to library study hall. Miss Nagesh. Mr. O'Brien looked up. Good news? I pressed the slip to my chest like it was a telegram bearing news of a soldier's homecoming. You have no idea. Surrey High has two separate lunch hours, with all four grades mixed together. Megan, Carter, and I had second lunch. I wasn't sure which one Casey ended up with. Megan plunked her stack of books down on our table and headed for the lunch line. Dad always packed my lunches, and now Casey's, I guess. So I never had to brave cafeteria food. I saw a flash of blonde, and Carter came in, carrying a dark green metal lunchbox that matched my purple one. His mother got them for us back to school presents. They were made by some Danish designer who was known for his artisanal metalwork. I was tempted to look them up online, but I had a feeling they cost about $100 each, and I wouldn't be able to look Mrs. Bloom in the eye if that were true. Hey, Carter said, pressing his lips on my forehead. How's your sister? Don't know. Haven't seen her. Hi, guys. Emily Rosen set her tray down across from us, a smile on her heart-shaped face. Happy Monday. Hey, Em. I turned back to Carter. I'm sort of hoping she miraculously made some friends or something. She didn't, Carter said, smoothing his cuffs over his wrist and pulling a sandwich from his lunchbox. I blinked. Why do you say that? She just walked in, he said. Alone. I can move over, Emily said, gathering her stuff. If they gave out prizes for niceness, she would be the model of the figurine on top of the trophy. We'd gone to school together since first grade, and Emily had swept the citizenship awards every year. I'm relieved to be able to say I'd always liked her, even during the brief 2-year period when I made it a point not to like anybody. After Megan and I started sitting together at lunch last year, Emily ended up drifting to our table. We had kids from almost every cliche. I think this is what this is. Q, whatever, cliche. I don't care. Kind of like high school stew. Thanks, but no, I said. I might give her a minute. I'm sure there are plenty of freshmen who still have room at their tables. But I was wrong. Every table seemed occupied by a fully formed group, and there was clearly an unspoken rule that forbade sitting down with strangers. Casey was like a rat in a maze, thwarted at every turn, and we were the scientists watching from above. To make matters worse, it seemed like stories about my sister's year in a mental institution were making their way around. Crowds parted wordlessly for her. Kids fell silent as she passed, then put their heads together, whispering and casting sly looks at her back. There's lots of room, Emily said. She has to learn to make her own way right? I asked. Survival of the fittest? Sink or swim? Carter, who hadn't taken his eyes off of her, said, sink. Casey had found an empty table. It was the worst spot in the whole cafeteria. It was next to the trash cans and smelled like garbage, especially by second lunch. Not to mention the constant danger of someone's poorly aimed trash landing in your food. Casey glanced around nervously, then opened her lunch bag and pulled out her sandwich. I winced as an older boy walking by slapped the tabletop. All hail, queen of the janitor's table, he crowed, walking past. My sister ducked her head, and my resolve weakened. I focused all of my attention on getting my wonky apple to balance. Carter's breath warmed my ear. Are you sure? He asked. No, I wasn't. How could I be? None of my life experiences had prepared me for this situation. But then the decision was made for me. Lex, Carter's voice held a warning note, strong enough for me to instinctively look over at Casey, who was shrinking in her seat like a hand puppet without a hand. Mimi Larid stood over my sister, hands on her hips. I was too far away to hear what she was saying, but it carried outwardly to the tables around them, drawing tons of attention. I bolted to my feet. I'll be right back. Mimi Larid had been Casey's best and last friend. She was loyal up until the moment that my sister, in the beginning stages of her possession, broke Mimi's arm in a confrontation over one of Casey's precious dolls. Casey spent 8th grade at Harmony Valley. Mimi spent it clawing to the top of the social ladder. Now she was top tier, even as a freshman. Her expensive clothes, well maintained appearance, and haughty attitude made it clear that she was not to be messed with. As I came closer, I could hear random words: possessed, psycho, stalker, and see my sister cowering under Mimi's ranting. People at nearby tables were watching and listening. Any drama is good drama. This would have to be handled delicately. Mimi's big sister, Pepper, was a prominent fixture in my social circle. I couldn't blast Mimi the way I once would have, but I planned to make her stop in no uncertain terms. I didn't get a chance, though. As I opened my mouth to call her name, I was interrupted. Hey, Mimi, why don't you pick on someone your own size? Lydia Small approached them, her hands on her hips. Mimi turned around, blushing furiously. For all her beauty rituals, she wasn't what you'd call a petite girl. Lydia was 6 inches shorter than Mimi and probably 40 pounds lighter, but she waltzed right up to her. Could you please keep your mooing at a more appropriate volume? She asked sweetly. People are trying to eat. Mimi let out a squeak of rage as the tables around them tittered. Lydia feigned alarm. Why would you even do this now? She asked. Do you realize you're missing out on a valuable cud chewing time? Go away, Mimi countered feebly. Lydia put her hand on the table and tipped her head to one shoulder in an over-practiced pose. I'm not going anywhere, she said slowly. You go away. At this point, one of Mimi's friends swooped in and dragged her back to their table. I went over to my sister. Casey, I said, are you all right? Come sit with me. Casey looked intently at her brown lunch bag. I'm okay, Lexi. Lydia smiled brightly. Oh, hi, Lexi. You're so welcome for saving your sister from Moo Moo. She could have been eaten, you know. High school is a very dangerous place. What are you doing here? I asked. Lydia's eyes widened, talking to a new student, making friends. Welcome wagon stuff. Well, leave my sister alone. Come on, Case, I said. All poor Casey needed was to be endlessly ridiculed by a revolving door of jerks. Or, Casey, Lydia said, you could come hang with me and my friends. Casey's mouth did its open and shut thing. She didn't know what to say. Lydia changed tactics, looking at my table by the window. Did it really take you this long to find her? She asked me. Or did you wait until Mimi attacked to take pity or condescend to let her sit with you? Casey's cheeks were fiery red. After a long pause, her chin lifted in slow motion. I might go with Lydia. You don't have to do that, I held. Lydia's head jerked up like I'd hit her. Oh, please. We're not good enough for your sister? We were good enough for you once upon a time, Alexis. Thanks anyway, Lexi. Casey mumbled, slipping her lunch sack back into her book bag. I watched in silence. Lydia gave her a glittery grin, the kind the wolf wore when he opened the door for Little Red Riding Hood. Excuse me, the voice behind me was soft and hesitant. Is this table available? I looked up to see the awkward girl with the cane standing near us, holding her tray crookedly in one hand. Yeah, Casey said. I'm leaving. Lydia put on her best poison strawberry smile and, keeping one eye on me, said, You know what? Don't eat alone. Come sit with my friends. What's your name? The girl looked up disbelievingly from under a a curtain of slightly greasy bangs. Adrian. Lydia gave a brisk head bob. Come with us, Adrian. Need help with your stuff? She lifted the tray from the girl's hands and headed for the double doors, towing Casey and Adrian in her wake line like some emo Pied Piper. I stood watching them until they disappeared into the sunlight. Then I made my way back to my table, feeling stiff and self-conscious. I'd failed at something, but I couldn't pinpoint what it was. Is Casey all right? Carter asked. Mm-hmm, I chirped, opening my plastic pudding container. I started shoving food into my mouth so I wouldn't have to speak. Instead, inside my head, the thoughts were buzzing fast and furious. And the loudest of them was, when did I turn into that girl? The girl who's too busy with her pack of friends and boyfriend to be nice to unpopular kids. The girl who treats Lydia and her group like they're a bunch of freaks by default. In other words, when did I turn into the kind of person I claimed to hate? After the final bell, I texted Casey, meet at Megan's car. Megan went at her locker, next to mine. Hey, she said. Then Pepper showed up. Red hair on skin, so pale it was almost blue. At some point, she'd been wise enough to give up the idea of ever getting a smidge of a tan. She looked at me and sighed. So, Alexis, she said, I hear my sister lost it during lunch. Yeah, I said, making a very concerted effort to keep my feelings about Mimi separate from my feelings about Pepper, which had been carefully cultivated over a year of mutually weary good behavior. Pepper managed to look apologetic. The timing's just bad. She had her first drill team practice this morning, and apparently the team's a joke this year. Megan closed her locker. I'm surprised she even signed up. Pepper shrugged. Well, she couldn't get a doctor's note for cheerleading because of her arm. What she didn't say was because of Casey. Megan nodded. She understood. She'd been co-captain of the cheerleading squad before she'd been tossed into a wall, also because of Casey. Doctors had told her grandmother that so much as landing a cartwheel wrong would cause Megan's left knee to explode like a fireworks display. Now she was called a student coach, and she helped with choreography and scheduling. But I knew she missed being part of the action. Drill team, cheerleading, I said, stacking my books. Same difference, right? Silence. No, Lex, Megan said, eyebrow raised. I mean, maybe at some schools, but here, not even close. I shut my locker. I get why she's upset. Just ask her to leave Casey alone, okay? Yeah, I'll talk to her, Pepper said. Speaking of Casey, I said, I wonder where her locker is. I'm not even sure if she can find her way out to the parking lot. My phone vibrated and a text message popped up. Walking home with Adrian. Oh, never mind. I said, she's walking home with Adrian.